You found the skeleton. How would you calculate that size? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on this.
Hey there YouTube, the Dapper Dinosaur here. I know it's been a while, but we are back for some speculative evolution. First, I want to apologize. It's been more than 3 months. At this point, by the time you see this, it might be 4 since the last video. Unfortunately, these just take a really long time to make, and in order to be able to make one, I have to have enough stuff to keep coming out to feel comfortable making them, because these videos, even though they're sometimes pretty short, still usually take nearly 2 weeks to make. So, I really wish I could do it a whole lot faster, but that's just how it is. Anyway, we have 6 new species for you, and first up, we have a special guest on. This is his second appearance as a voice actor here for the Speculative Evolution project. We have Saurus-Blooded with the filter worm.
Introducing the filter worm. Mycoids evolved where the small chain of volcanic islands formed between Kubshe, Yama, and Antarctica. The rise in volcanic activity caused large deposits of ash and pumice to form on the ocean floor, resulting in an abundance of nutrients for phytoplankton to feed on, which in turn allowed for an explosion in zooplankton populations. Mycoids took advantage of the abundance of food, and the hairy filaments on their bodies evolved into fibers for filter feeding. This also resulted in some atavistic features, such as the return of limbs using the same developmental pathways as the motive appendages in Sicilia. Also, mycoids retained opsin, which have concentrated into eye spots. Creature designed by Artsy Kid. Filterworms are divided into 4 parts: the head, body, tail, and the hundreds of thin hairs called fibers. The head houses an extremely teeny brain, barely more than somewhat higher concentration of neuron analogs. The big fish-like tail is used for short bursts of speed when it needs to escape. Although, given the drag from the fibers, they are still rather slow, and so tend not to stray far from the rocks that they can take shelter in. The filterworm also has a pair of sharp hooked appendages that helps them anchor it to the rock when it needs to. The filter-feeding fibers themselves are most interesting part of the entire body. Each strand of fiber branches out into a tiny flower-like structure called a grasper that can catch plankton. The plankton is then broken down into fluids and travels up the flower into the body cavity. Similar to their ancestors, the filterworms may reproduce by budding. When it reaches the last few weeks of its life, it breaks off around 10 tiny blobs the size of water bottle caps that are made out of its own body before sinking down to the seafloor. Meanwhile, the blobs who carry pieces of important genetic information begin to form into new filterworm bodies, ready to start its life in the next 2 weeks. However, a filterworm may also release a cloud of gametes into the water near other filterworms which themselves are doing the same. This results in tiny zooplantic filterworm larvae. They have no sexes, and this release of gametes is done by any given filterworm every few local days, usually at night while hiding with conspecifics in caves. The blob formed by budding hatches into a free-swimming larva that uses its sharp hooks to attach itself onto a carcass or dead organic matter in general. Then it starts to feed using its newly formed fibers. Then it enters the juvenile stage 3 months later, which is the start of its filter-feeding life. Finally, after approximately 100 local days, it becomes a fully fledged adult, living for another 3 or so local years as a filter feeder before starting the cycle again. For those filter worms produced by sexual reproduction, have a nearly identical life cycle, except that they grow from a zygote. They will need to consume food. This they do in the form of hapless zooplankton and phytoplankton, although they themselves are vulnerable to suspension or filter feeding, and a vast majority will meet their fate of being eaten. Filterworms mainly inhabit small rocky caves in the oceans between Yama and Kubshe, but some have been seen in surface areas. They are mostly preyed upon by larger aquatic creatures who see their soft, boneless bodies as an opportunity for an easy meal. This is why they have evolved a strong tail to escape. Even so, they survive more on the basis of prodigious reproduction than swift escape, dietary needs, and habits. They prey on both zooplankton and phytoplankton, which can be found in large numbers within the range of their habitats. They hide in caves after eating their fill and digest food. Once digestion is complete, they go back out to feed again. Social structures. In larval and juvenile stages, groups of unrelated filterworms come together to form huge swarms of around 100 individuals. This ensures that many of them survive, because there is more safety in numbers. Once it becomes an adult, it will be completely solitary by day, and at night it will hide in caves with other conspecifics and occasionally mate there. Filterworms are found in the shallow waters between Cubshay, the south coast of Arctica, and the coast of Yama, except its westernmost extent. The eyes of the filterworm are rudimentary, but the mycoids never lost their opsin and kept using them to regulate circadian rhythms, and so they were able to re-evolve into basic eye spots. These eyes can do little more than detect the basics of light and the sudden shadow, which will result in a rapid beating of its tail to escape a predator. Genetic ancestors, mycoids. Scientific name, Philtrophidae yathanensis. Origin and ancestry, Phytozoa. Lifespan, 3.5 local years. Average height, 10 centimeters. Average length, 18 centimeters. And on to the next species.
Thank you, Source Blooded, for that, but now we come to the purple vine. Supporting your own weight is a drag. For photosynthesizers, there's a struggle between the metabolic needs of creating support tissues and the advantages of becoming bigger, allowing for more surface area to allow for more photosynthesis. Some organisms solve this by using the environment for support. This results in the typical vine structure. On Yama, some descendants of Basio have gone this route, attaching themselves to rocks from which they can grow upward, allowing them to take in more sunlight without bothering with woody parts. Creature design by Dapper Dinosaur. Purple vines are in most respects exaggerated versions of Basio magno, Phytomycos magno. They consist of a bulb buried in the substrate from which roots extend, a stem which forms the bulk of the organism and extends all along nearby rocks, and the leaf structures which extend from the stem starting a few dozen centimeters above the ground. The stem excretes a glue-like substance, which on the side away from the substrate simply dries into a thin skin that helps prevent water loss. On the side in contact with the substrate, it helps adhere the organism to whatever it is climbing. The bulb serves as a water and sugar reservoir, drawing in nutrients during the day and sending them out to the rest of the organism during the night. Unlike most modern vines on Earth, the growth pattern of purple vine does not involve branching. A single stem with leaf shoots is all that occurs normally. The primary form of reproduction is vegetative, with the root system extending up exploratory shoots, which will grow into a new stem with its own bulb. If it does not encounter a vertical or near vertical surface, the new shoot will not grow much beyond a few centimeters. However, if it does find a vertical surface, it can grow to be several meters long. Purple vines are also able to reproduce sexually. During the spring, some of the leaf shoots will start to shed copious amounts of wind-borne sperm cells. Other leaf shoots will swell into bulb-like structures with large pores, and when the sperm cells encounter these bulb-like structures, they fertilize the seeds that are in them. The bulb will, after about 5 local days, fall off as a dry husk. The wind blows this husk around and scatters some of the seeds. Purple vines are found in rocky terrain all over Yama, especially in areas near surface water. They are not exceptionally good at water retention. Genetic ancestor, Basio magno. Scientific name, Monoculus. Origin, retinal phyto. Lifespan, any given stem can survive up to 10 local years. Average length, stems can grow up to 10 meters. Alright, and now we have Space Dragon, who will be reading the entry for Monoculus.
As the sun sets over the shallow waters of the reefs of Almaishah, a large conical shape rises from its night haunt between the rocks in the Twilight Zone. It is on the lookout for any slow-moving creatures like certain xenoradiatons of Phytozoan. The Monoculus magnificus, more commonly known as the Twilight Cyclops. It is a large, 2-meter-long predator and scavenger swimming the seas of Almaishah by night. With its large central eye, it stalks the ocean under the cover of darkness, using its superior vision to search for unsuspecting prey to attack. Much like a sea star of Earth, the Monoculus is a voracious predator and scavenger, but it lives at a different pace than many other organisms. It is adapted for eating tough or even relatively toxic but slow-moving organisms. With nothing but its relatively small fins to propel it, it relies upon being intimidating and on its shell to protect it. Creature design by Lethal Cuteness and Dr. Misa. The Twilight Cyclops is a 2-meter long Califuichthian. While it has a full shell made of carbon silicates, an abdominal anus, and digestive gland capable of producing psilocytes, this is where the similarities between it and other Califuichthians end. To begin, the Twilight Cyclops has lost the 2 rearmost pairs of limbs, which have been converted into hook-like muscles on the edge of the shell, which are used to help the organism move its cranial tagma in and out of its shell. Additionally, it has lost the silicate plate on the cranial tagma, and no longer possesses the ability to wholly retract its head into its shell. The first 2 pairs of fins have been converted into claw-like structures. The outermost 4 bones have merged into 2, with the outermost groups extending out further on each end to create a claw-like point. This claw-like point is covered in a hard layer of keratin, which it uses to protect the ends of its claws and create a sharp, blade-like structure. These claws allow the Cyclops to crawl along the seafloor while it stalks prey, and provide it with the ability to grasp the prey so it can kill and consume it. Along the keratin, sharp, hook-like structures line the claws. These hooks consist of silicate tips that grow from the keratin early after its generation, and prevent prey from escaping the Cyclops' grasp. Additionally, these fins have moved forward and are now located on the cranial tagma. This allows them additional mobility with their limbs, as well as close proximity to the mouth on the underside of their heads. With regards to the interior anatomy, numerous adaptations have evolved to aid the Cyclops in hunting and survival. The digestive gland has undergone several changes to the structure of its enzymes, and the gland now produces the necessary hormones, enzymes, and other organic materials necessary to utilize the glyoxylate cycle. These materials are held within converted psilocytes, and thus allow the organism to convert lipids into carbohydrates and glucose directly, without having to rely on the inefficiency of exchanging resources with symbiotic microbes performing this process. This, in turn, has made the organism far better at withstanding starvation, as it does not need to break down proteins into amino acids to use for gluconeogenesis via the citric acid cycle, thus allowing it to avoid atrophying its protein stores for a longer period of time. This system also allows it to more efficiently break down the high amounts of lipids it consumes regularly, granting it one of the more efficient digestive systems oriented towards carnivory on Almaishah currently. Another important change between itself and the more basal members of Cephaloptinae is its complete loss of external gill fronds. Rather, the Twilight Cyclops relies entirely upon its internal ctenidia within the ctenidian coelom. It shares a unidirectional flow of water through the ctenidian coelom through the use of valves leading from the esophagus and out of the mouth with the tiger snail. In fact, this trait is shared by almost all Chematocaliphosians. Additionally, the Twilight Cyclops' shell consists of numerous air pockets filled with waste gases such as CO2 and methane, produced by symbiotic chemocoids. Rarely, hydrogen gas may also be released into these air pockets in small quantities, resulting in the creation of methane and trace amounts of oxygen gas. These air pockets allow the Twilight Cyclops to maintain a relatively high level of buoyancy, allowing it to easily glide and propel itself through the water column. The Twilight Cyclops is a diploid simultaneous hermaphrodite that relies on a fairly different strategy for reproduction compared to most cephaloptins. Roughly once per 16 local days, Twilight Cyclopses lay clusters of up to 15 eggs in a small sac, which are deposited on the ocean floor. These egg sacs consist of a membrane that slowly dissolves, releasing pheromones that other Twilight Cyclops can detect. Whenever a Twilight Cyclops detects these pheromones and approaches them, they will release their male gametes in a large plume to fertilize the eggs. After this, it will simply leave the eggs to fend for themselves. Cyclops eggs hatch after about 1 local day, and the small larvae will swim into the water column. These larvae are small and underdeveloped, and as such cannot freely swim or hunt. As a result, they float freely through the water column and are sustained by a small yoke attached to their abdomen. The Cyclops larvae will remain in this state for approximately 7 local days, during which they will develop into a small worm-like organism with the characteristic eyes and fins of the taxa. After developing into a nymph, the Cyclops young will sink to the benthic layer and utilize their claws to dig a small 10 centimeters long burrow into the sediment. The nymph will hide in this burrow until it is approximately 60 local days old, when it will have developed a proper shell around its abdomen and posterior tagma. Until this occurs, it will live as a burrowing ambush predator and attempt to learn to hunt. Since its yolk runs out at the beginning of this phase of life, nymphs that cannot learn to hunt will die. Those that are successful will rapidly develop their external shells and grow in size. After 40 to 60 local days, the Cyclops nymphs develop their external shells to enough of a degree to leave their burrows and learn to hunt in the water column. While the environment has changed, the hunting strategy employed by the species is not particularly different in adulthood. Hunting is still based on lunging out from underneath prey as a means of ambushing it. Those nymphs that are most successful will grow faster, and will also reach larger sizes, thus enabling them to reproduce for a longer span of time and thus propagate their genes more efficiently. It is also worth noting that the greatest danger to the nymphs at this phase of life are adult Twilight Cyclops, as the species does demonstrate cannibalistic tendencies towards juveniles. Nymphs mature into adults after about 150 local days, after which they are full adults, usually just under 2 meters in length. At this point, they will lay their first clutch of eggs and begin to seek out other egg clusters, thus producing offspring of their own. These young adults will continue to grow for the rest of their lives. However, most specimens will never grow beyond a size of 2.5 meters, though there are some rare specimens recorded to have reached sizes of up to 3 meters in length. The Twilight Cyclops inhabits most of the Yama-Kubshe major reef system, and thrives in the shallow waters that enable it to dart up into the water column by pushing off of the seafloor. As a result, the Twilight Cyclops can be found from the southern tip of Kubshe to western Arctica. The Twilight Cyclops is a carnivorous organism, gaining most of its nutrition from the lipids stored in its prey. The organism will hunt almost anything smaller than it so long as it can grab it with its claws and use its radula to tear into the organism. One strategy the organism uses to hunt is by pressing itself low to the seafloor and crawling along it whilst looking up for prey, making use of its weak but still effective infrared vision to search for prey above it. When it has located prey, it will creep along the seafloor until it is within striking range, after which it will lunge into the water column by kicking off of the seafloor with its fins and rushing towards its prey. If its prey is unable to get out of range in time, the Twilight Cyclops will grasp it with its powerful claws and proceed to use its radula to kill and consume the creature. Additionally, if this has been less successful, it will begin searching the surface for slower bottom-dwelling organisms. Due to the efficiency of the organism's digestive system when digesting lipids, the Twilight Cyclops can go up to 60 local days without eating. However, should it begin to starve and deplete its supply of lipids, the results are devastating. The loss of musculature within its limbs depletes the organism's ability to lunge off of the seafloor, rendering hunting almost impossible. Thus, while the amount of time until starvation is extended, the onset of the consequences is magnified significantly due to the nature of the Twilight Cyclops' metabolism and digestive strategy. The greatest and most visual change to the organism's anatomy are its eyes. Most prominent of these is the singular large eye which lends the creature its name. The eyes of the Twilight Cyclops can be divided into 2 types, a singular large eye and 2 smaller lateral eyes. The 2 smaller eyes are held on flexible eye stalks and are mainly used to provide the Twilight Cyclops with vision around its body, especially behind it. These eyes, while not as advanced as the central eye, are still quite complex camera-type eyes capable of detecting a significant range of low-frequency colors, such as yellow, orange, red, and the upper portion of the infrared spectrum. The large central eye, on the other hand, is far more complex. Besides the large size which grants a great deal of precision and range of vision, This eye also contains opsins sensitive to infrared light, which has evolved at the expense of its colored vision. As a result, this organism possesses the ability to see reasonably well at night, a trait that has proven invaluable when hunting prey and living a nocturnal lifestyle. This organism relies on its central eye to maintain its circadian rhythm as well, and can perform stereopsis through the combined use of its central and secondary eyes. The combination of up to 3 different perspectives results in some of the most effective, but not flawless, depth perception. Its greatest weakness in this trait, however, is its use of light cues from the moonlight shining above it, as it relies on detection of different hues through the use of its 2 secondary eyes as a cue to enhance its depth perception. If these colors are manipulated in such a way as to dilute these hue differences, the Twilight Cyclops' depth perception can potentially fail to function properly, leading to a significantly greater chance of failed hunting attempts. Genetic ancestor: Xenuiuli kirbii. Scientific name: Monoculus magnarufus. Lifespan: 20 local years in optimal conditions. Average height: 66 centimeters. Average length: 2 meters.
First, I want to say a huge thank you to my guest voice talent. Basically, this past week or so, it's been extremely difficult for me to get audio recording done because there's been almost constant construction outside of my house during the day, and I'm having to record this at like 3:15 in the morning. So, they've been a huge help. If you would like to help me in this way, I've been pulling out of my group of patrons and channel members who have access to my patron and channel member only Discord server. So feel free to go join the channel or hit up my Patreon, link in the description, and you too can have opportunities to do things like do guest voice spots, and also just get inside information on how Speculative Evolution project is going, get early access to videos, and all sorts of other goodies. Anyway, up next is the spiral bush. Humans are usually not great at math, and nature basically just doesn't even bother. Yet it still often results in beautiful use of mathematically defined shapes. One such shape is called the Fibonacci spiral, in which multiple spirals can start from a center point, and because they bend away from previous points at the golden ratio, phi, they can cover the entire surface with essentially no gaps. On Earth, this is clearly seen in sunflowers and many other plants, including many succulents. On Almaishah, the first known organism to hit this sweet spot of maximum surface coverage is the spiral bush of Yama. Creature design by Dapper Dinosaur. In its most basic structure, the spiral bush is not really terribly different from Bossio magno, Phytomycos magno. It consists of a stem, a bulb, and shoots that terminate in photosynthetic structures. The stem and the proximal bits of the shoots are now woody to a degree proportional to the length of the structure in question, with the stem being quite hard and somewhat brittle. There are 2 levels at which the spiral bush uses phyllotaxis spirals, in which the angle defining the spiral is 1.618, etc. radians. First, the actual shoots of the organism form such a spiral if one were to look directly down on the plant. This ensures maximum surface area coverage for the shoots, allowing for maximum surface for photosynthesis with minimum waste in the form of self-blocking of sunlight. The shoots themselves also produce petal-like leaves that are also arranged in a phyllotaxis spiral, again allowing for maximum surface area. In both spirals, the instances get smaller as they get closer to the center. During the spring, the leaves shed spermatozoa, and adult plants form a bulb at the top of the stem. The bulb has indents which house female gametes. When the wind blows the male gametes, some of them may come into contact with the female gametes of other spiral plants. After enough such gametes are fertilized, usually between half and 3/4, the bulb dries up and will break off, forming a husk. This husk is very light and can be blown easily by the wind. As it bounces across the ground, it will drop off new plants, allowing the plant to spread to new areas. A new stem will start with no shoots, but soon new shoots will grow from the tip as the organism grows. Once it reaches about 500 centimeters in height, it will then grow isometrically, not growing new shoots. The spiral plant has largely given up on vegetative growth from the root system. Spiral plants live all across Yama anywhere there is open water or a high water table. Genetic ancestor: Bossio magno. Scientific name: Phytosperia yamanensis. Origin: retinal phyto. Average height: Full-grown organisms are approximately 1 meter tall. Next up, we have the Strelozol with an X, not to be confused with the Strelozol with a Z. Strelozol slowly modified its ambush predator lifestyle, looking for a more active role in hunting. It followed its prey to land and adapted. Strelozol with an X now walks on 4 legs and can grab prey with what used to be its front legs. Picture 2 Strelozol fight over a killed Sprisher. Creature design by Zord. Strelozol have started walking on 4 legs, which have hardened stubs on the distal end and end in an X shape. It has adapted for rapid bursts of speed to outrun potential prey. However, it cannot keep up this speed for much more than about 30 seconds. Its tails have thinned as they now are used more for balance instead of propulsion. It has armor plates with a small spike running along its spine. Its first plate located on the head has 2 spikes instead of 1 for males, only 1 spike for females. The graspers it has located near the mouth now end in a spike. It uses them as a weapon and to manipulate food while eating it. The mouth is lined with 3 rows of sharp protrusions it uses to rip open prey items. It has 2 forward-facing eyes and 2 others facing to the side. What used to be the front 2 legs have turned into pincher-like graspers used to attack prey and fight for mates. It has a breathing apparatus in between the armor plates which it uses to take in oxygen by contracting muscles to expel air and relaxing it to let it back in. The walking legs, grasping arms, and the mouth parts are all jointed. Males fight amongst each other for the chance to reproduce with available females. The winning male gets to mate with multiple females who then travel to bodies of water to lay their eggs. Their eggs are deposited in holes dug on riverbeds where their thin covering layer can remain moist with ease. Once hatched on the shores of the river, Strelozol must evade being preyed upon. Those that survive this while eating creatures smaller than themselves get to grow to their full size when they mature. During mating season, females emit a scent to signal they are ready to mate. The males will fight over females, and once mated, the females will go to a riverbed to dig a hole and deposit their eggs. Strelozol live on land and near water around mostly rivers to drink and reproduce, but sometimes venture into swamps as well. They prey on creatures near the water as they are always forced to return to moisten their skin. Strelozol can be found anywhere there's water in Kupshai. Their forward-facing eyes allow them to better focus on prey right in front of them. The side eyes give them a wide field of view. They are also capable of detecting faint scents with chemoreceptors lining the edge of their mouths. Genetic ancestor, Strelozol, with a Z. Scientific name, Centaurus rex. Origin, Paleotagmata. Lifespan, 6 local years. Average height, 2 meters. Average length, 4 meters. Alright, and last but certainly not least, except perhaps in size, we have the Wushi. Waterhoppers started spending more time outside of water on land. They kept finding themselves in situations where they landed outside of water, and those who survived best became the Wushi. Wushi intentionally jump onto low-hanging branches, which they will grab with their 2 long tentacles and hang upside down from. They wait for their opportunity to let go and glide towards their prey and get their food. Originally evolved in the island chain between the 2 major continents, Wushi have diversified into 3 distinct shapes, one being found in Yama, another in Kupshai, and the more basal one still being found in the island chain between them. Pictured, 2 Wushi hang from a young Bossia maximus in Kupshai. Creature design by Zord. The Wushi are much flatter than their ancestor, the Waterhopper. The 2 long tentacles are now used to hang from tree branches above water. The flaps are closer to fins. They are used both to glide and to propel the organism through water in search of a new spot on which to perch. It wraps itself in its fin-like structures to reduce wind drag, as well as to prevent its gills from going dry too quickly. It has hardened quill-like structures in its mouth to prevent prey from escaping. Wushi also have sticky pads with microstructures resembling those of geckos to help them grab onto branches. What makes them different in each geographical location is their eyes. The Islander Wushi retain its ancestral eye stalk locations. The Kupshai Wushi does too, but its eyes sag almost the entire body length to better see the water below. In both cases, they retract when the Wushi is not hanging to reduce drag. The Yama Wushi has undergone a more drastic change by internalizing most of its eye stalks. A pair moved towards the front and another towards the back, then moved above the mouth for better vision. Wushi reproduces in the same way as its ancestors. They broadcast spawn in shallow waters, where they will be safe from larger predators unable to venture into shallow waters, and once the young are large enough, they will find their way to the branches with ease. At the beginning of their life cycle, they are essentially plankton floating in the water. They spend their early life in the water as their water jets are not developed enough to pump out of the water. Once grown, they can jump into branches from which they hunt. They spend their days above bodies of water waiting to pounce on unsuspecting prey. They tend to stay where rivers meet the oceans, but they sometimes wander upstream. There are 3 species, one found all across Yama, Torsit yamanensis, one found on the islands between Kupshai and Yama, Pseudototorodes nison, and one found across western Kupshai, T. volantis. Genetic ancestor, the water hopper. Scientific names, Torsit volantis, T. yamanensis, Pseudototorodes nison. Origin, Xenoradiata. Lifespan, 1 local year. Average height, 15 centimeters without tentacles. Average length, 12 centimeters. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little glimpse into the life swimming around and walking around on crawling around and growing, all on Almaishah. Remember, please like this video if you liked it. Hit dislike and tell me in the comments if you didn't like it. And either way, I do hope that you subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have subscribed, check the bell icon and check to make sure that all notifications are turned on so you're always notified when there's new Dapper Dino content. I'm the Dapper Dinosaur. I just want to take a minute to thank my channel members and patrons, especially those pledging $20 or above. Bob Knob, Bent Hovend, Denny5252, Ian Chen, John Ackerman, Chris Love, Landon Knoll, Lingwei, Sphincter of Doom, The Venerable Veed, and Patrick Dennis. The people whose names you see on screen right now are a big part of keeping the lights on here at Casa Dino, and without them, this channel really wouldn't exist in the form that it does now. If you'd like to join this awesome team, there are links down in the description to join the channel, or to join my Patreon. It starts at only $1 on Patreon or $1.99 here on YouTube. There's also a convenient join button right below this video if you want to join as a member on YouTube. Joining lets you see most of my videos early, in some cases more than a month early. Also, you can join an exclusive member and patron-only Discord server, which has a pretty direct line to me. And as you go up in tier, you get more and more benefits, including getting your name on this list. If a monthly subscription isn't really for you, but you still like to help out the channel, there's a merch store linked in the description. It has t-shirts, it has baby onesies, it has mugs, it has blankets, anything you want, Dapper Dino branded. And if none of that seems right for you, please just like and share my videos and subscribe to the channel. That helps immensely. Thank you very much.
How